Hello everyone and welcome to this editing checklist video. In this video we are going to review this statement on your checklist. It states I have a period, exclamation point, or question mark at the end of every sentence. Sometimes when we write we are so excited to get our ideas down on paper that we may forget to use end punctuation to separate one independent clause from another independent clause. In other words, we get so excited to write that we may forget to use a period, exclamation point, or question mark to separate one idea from another idea. In this example, this student forgot to use end punctuation to separate the ideas in his story. So let's read the story to see what it sounds like with no end punctuation. Here we go. When we got back to my house, we saw the big dog. It was running towards us at high speeds. We ran and ran and ran. We finally got to a fork and went right. And we looked around and we just saw that the dog wasn't there anymore. There are clear places in this story where we need to use an end punctuation to separate one idea from another. So let's reread it and find those places where we can put end punctuation. When we got back to my house, we saw the big dog. It was running towards us at high speeds. We ran and ran and ran. Okay, when we got back to my house, we saw the big dog. Period. And then we're going to capitalize this I because it's the beginning of a sentence. It was running towards us at high speeds. We ran and ran and ran. So one idea is that the dog was running towards them at high speeds. And then the other idea is that they began to run and run and run. So we're going to separate those two ideas by putting a period after speeds, going back in, capitalizing the W. We ran and ran and ran. We finally got to a fork and went right. Then we looked around and we saw that the dog wasn't there anymore. Okay, so we ran and ran and ran. That's one idea. We finally got to a fork and we went right. That's a separate idea. So we're going to go back and capitalize this W because it's the beginning of the sentence. We finally got to a fork and went right. Then we looked around and we saw that the dog wasn't there anymore. Okay, so we're going to capitalize this T because it's the beginning of a sentence and put a period at the very end. Now let's read to see what it sounds like with end punctuation. When we got back to my house, we saw the big dog. It was running towards us at high speeds. We ran and ran and ran. We finally got to a fork and went right. Then we looked around and we saw that the dog wasn't there anymore. So now I want you to try, or want you to go back to your essay or story and check to see that you have end punctuation, check to see that you have periods, exclamation points, or question marks. You're going to check that you have the periods, exclamation points, or question marks at the end of each idea. So if you notice that you have a paragraph that keeps going on and on and on with no periods, exclamation points, or question marks, read it to yourself once to get a feel for what it sounds like with no end punctuation mark. Then go back and start rereading parts of your paragraph and identifying those places where you need an end punctuation mark because there are two distinctly different ideas and need to be separated with an end punctuation mark. So go ahead and try and then come back and watch your next video.